Well, for his thoughts on the latest developments, we are now joined by Jon Allen, who from 2006 to 2010 served as Canada's ambassador to Israel. Jon, thank you for making the time once again for us.
My pleasure, Michael.
So here you have Israel now agreeing to this deal. We saw last night Hamas agreeing to this deal, but there's still the question, of the hostages, those who live, and sadly the bodies of those who died. It's not expected that they'll be returned until Monday. So how critical will these next few days be?
I think we're just dealing here with a logistics problem of Hamas having to gather all of the living hostages into one place so that they can be turned over to the International Committee of the Red Cross. And then there's also this problem of locating all of the bodies of the dead hostages. There seemed to be some indication that some of them may have been under the rubble. Some simply hadn't been kept track of. And I think they're trying to, as best as they can. I've also heard from sources with some outside help to locate as many of these bodies as they can. So I don't think it's a substantive problem. I think it's logistical.
So logistical, we'll see how that develops over the weekend. But I also want to ask about the other challenges of this peace deal, because there is also this demand that Hamas plays no future role in the governance of Gaza, the demand that they also disarm. How difficult will those goals be to achieve?
I think the disarmament goal is probably the more difficult. President Abbas agreed with Prime Minister Carney and many other world leaders that Hamas would not play a role in the Palestinian Authority elections in the West Bank, and that is also a part of the governing of Gaza Strip, that an interim technocratic government would come in appointed by the Palestinian Authority, but that it would not involve Hamas. So I think that part's easier. The question of Hamas disarming is tied very much to two things. One, Israeli withdrawal. The two are supposed to come together. And the second is Hamas trying to obtain from the Americans and from its Arab supporters, Qatar and Turkey, some kind of guarantees that once they hand the hostages over, that Israel will not restart the war. And I think that's been very much a part of the conversations. So we'll have to see. The withdrawal to certain lines and the disarmament are both going to have to happen, and we're going to have to trust both sides to fulfill their obligations in this regard.
Mm-hmm. Trust both sides, as you say, but you also mentioned the Palestinian Authority, and the deal does lean in on the PA, but even amongst Palestinians, the PA is regarded as corrupt and incompetent, with support for the governing party in the single digits when you look at the latest polls. So does leaning on the PA alone create a challenge to get this peace deal implemented?
Well, the Technocratic Committee, as I understand it, has already been named. So that's not a problem. Going forward, we're looking to elections in the West Bank by the Palestinian Authority, free and fair elections without Hamas's participation within a year. That's what President Abbas promised to the Prime Minister, to Prime Minister Starmer, to President Macron, and many others. If there is indeed free and fair elections and a new government is elected, Abbas is highly unlikely to be one of the candidates, then you can have increased credibility, increased support, and then hopefully over time you can get a unification between the West Bank and Gaza, and a government ruling over both. This is, medium to long-term effort.
Even for the long term. I wonder what you think about the effort to create a Palestinian state, because while, the deal talks about a new Gaza and these assurances that Israel will neither occupy nor, annex Gaza to be a part of the Israeli state, there is no direct reference to the creation of a Palestinian state. So can there be a peace deal, a long-standing one, without a two-state solution?
Well, ultimately, no. There won't be an end of conflict until there is two states for two peoples living in peace and security. In the short to medium term, yes, we've seen recognition by a number of Western states of Palestine, and that's an important contribution to this. But we won't see a full Palestine governing both Gaza and the West Bank for some time. The agreement alludes to a pathway towards a Palestinian state. I see the fingerprints of Prime Minister Netanyahu all over this. I'm sure the original draft that was put together by the Americans and a number of Gulf states and Arab states probably wasn't quite so vague and ambiguous. Because, as you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu opposes any Palestinian state. So the reality is we're going to have to wait until there's an election in Israel and hopefully a new government and elections, as I said, in the Palestinian Authority. And that's when we can begin to hopefully move towards trust, compromise, vision for these two peoples living side by side.
Quickly losing time here, Jon, but what are you watching out for then in the days and the weeks ahead?
I'm watching out to see whether President Trump and his team have the staying power to keep the pressure on. It was Trump's involvement and pressure that forced Netanyahu to the table, and the work of Qatar and Turkey with respect to Hamas. But the Americans are going to have to stay engaged. And if they don't, then I don't trust either Hamas or Israel to necessarily stick to their obligations. So we'll have to see whether Donald Trump can remain engaged on this one.
Jon Allen, again, always appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Michael.